Be a better writer using classic prose style to write. Have you ever read something that felt clear, confident, and effortless? Almost like the writer was simply showing you something through a window. That is classic prose style. We are going to break it down in a simple way. Not just what it looks like on the surface, but what is happening underneath. Because classic prose is not about fancy words, it is about stance. It is about how the writer positions themselves, the reader, and the truth. So let's begin to understand what classic prose is or is all about. Classic prose style is more than just a way of arranging words. It is a deliberate stance a writer takes towards the element of style. So writers, readers, truth, presentation, thoughts, and language form the classic prose. So if you are writing using the classic prose style, you have to bear in mind that as a writer, you need your reader, the truth, the presentation, your thought, and language all put together. So while it appears simple on the surface, mastering this style requires a deeper understanding of these choices and how they affect communication. Okay, so for your classic prose style to affect your communication, you need to understand certain choices so that readers will always enjoy your work. So classic prose is always enjoyable both to read and to write. But the simplicity can be deceiving. It can be deceiving at times, okay? It can be very deceiving, but that does not stop you from learning how to use the classic prose to write, to become a better writer. So what makes it classic is not just the flashy vocabulary or complex sentences, but the careful thought behind every word and sentences. So that makes it so unique and so enjoyable. Classic prose style is not just a writing technique. It's all about the mindset. Okay, so it is what happens when a writer makes a deliberate choice about 6 things. And what are the 6 things? They are the writer, as I mentioned earlier, the reader, truth, presentation, thoughts, and language. So it might look simple, yeah, it looks so simple, but that simplicity needs to be intentional. And mastering it requires a deep understanding. You need to understand what you are doing or what you want to write about or the particular style you want to use. So classic prose feels effortless, but it is built on preparation. You have to get yourself prepared if you want to choose that. So it is about choices. So before you write a single sentence, the choices you make shapes your style. Okay, so the sentences you choose will always shape your style. So most writers focus on sentence structure and word choice, the visible signs of style, without understanding the deeper conceptual choices behind them. So you need to understand the deeper construction behind every word that you choose. So here, to write in classic style effectively, you must first of all understand the rhetorical function of your choices, not just how the sentences look. So it's not about how the sentences look, but you need to understand the rhetorical function of the choices that you have chosen for this particular style of writing. So again, classic prose focuses on what a style does for communication rather than simply what it looks like. So how it affects communication and not how it simply looks. Okay, so you have to think of it this way. Think of it this way. Assume yourself as a painter or seeing a painter painting. The painter doesn't just choose colors. They always decide what emotions and ideas those colors will always convey. The same is true for writing. So whenever you are using classic prose to write, bear in mind or always remember the painter, how he chooses his colors and how he makes it with emotions. Okay, so the role of a writer, every writer has a role when it comes to classic prose. So in classic prose, the writer treats the reader as an equal partner. Yeah, you need to see your reader as a partner. There is no pedestal, no attempt to dominate the conversation, but instead, the writer and the reader must share the same viewpoint. But know that you and the reader are equal and you must share the same viewpoint. Again, the writer's interest is purely in presenting the subject, not in persuading, teaching, or impressing the reader. You don't have to impress the reader. Okay, you don't have to impress the reader. So there are other styles often assume on equal footings, and these are the instructional. Writer as a teacher and the reader as a learner. And then persuasive. The writer seeks the reader's agreement, often using overt techniques. So please, using overt techniques, you have to know how to use it well so that your readers may feel at the same footing with you. Okay, and then expressive. Writers has unique insight which they try to transmit. And then we have the bureaucratic, where the writer is authoritative and he sees the reader as his whole subordinate. That shouldn't be that. That shouldn't be so. So even in persuasive writing, the classic approach uses stealth argument. So convincing your reader through the clarity of truth rather than forceful persuasion. So don't force your reader. Don't use forceful persuasion on your reader. Okay, let them give them room to think through. Okay, and then assumption about the reader. The classic writer assumes the reader is competent and thoughtful. This has several effects. If you assume that the reader is competent and thoughtful, there are so many effects to this. And here the effect is the reader is capable of understanding the truth without any special pleading. And again, the writer can write confidently without hedging every statement. So kindly bear that in mind and know. And even unfamiliar experiences are presented as if the reader would reach the same conclusion if they experience them firsthand. So this approach fosters a sense of mutual respect and allows conviction to be naturally persuasive. And then we come to truth. As we mentioned, the sections: the writer, the reader, the truth, the presentation, and then the language. So you use truth as a guiding principle. And how does it play here? This is how it plays. So classic prose relies on the idea that truth can be known and communicated. This is principle. In our natural terms, truth, ideas that truth can be known and be communicated, because we always communicate truth and it's vice versa. And this principle always encourages clarity and confidence in writing. So make sure you avoid unnecessary heading like "it seems to me," that's in quotes, "it seems to me" in quotes, or as far as I know. Okay, so try as much as possible to keep the reader focused on the subject and not on the writer's uncertainties. Heading is always useful in some contexts, but overusing can distract or weaken your message. Classic prose trusts the reader to always navigate limitations naturally. So there are also limitations there. While they are positive, there's other aspect of it which is its limitations. And one of the boldest assumptions in classic prose is this: okay, truth can be known. As we all know, truth can be known. If you want to know the truth, you will know. So truth can be known. And many academic writers struggle with this idea because they thought they are trained to always hedge. So they will say "it seems" in quotes, or as I mentioned earlier, or "as far as I know." And some will begin a sentence as "in my opinion." So these are the hedging. So the hedging has its place, but when you overuse it, it always creates hesitation. So avoid that. These are the limitations. So classic prose avoid unnecessary hedging. So when you are using the classic prose style, you want to avoid these unnecessary hedgings in your writings or in your write-ups. And not because the writer is arrogant. So when you see such a writing, don't think that the writer is arrogant. It's a form of a style that the writer is putting out there. But because anything that distracts from the subject does not belong. So the focus stays on the thing being presented. So always the focus is on what you are presenting. The focus is on what you are presenting. Always take note of it and apply it. So the reader is trusted to understand these natural limitations without having them announced repeatedly. So here it is not announced repeatedly. So always give regards to your reader. And we come to presentation. Writing as a conversation, because in writing you are having a conversation with your reader, not just writing alone, but a conversation as well. So classic prose treats writing as a form of conversation. So you are having a conversation with your reader whom you don't know or not met before. So the goal is presentation, not self-display or argumentation. The writer and reader share joint attention on the subject, as if looking through an undistorting window. So there are certain features that you need to avoid. So avoid features you wouldn't encounter in real conversation. So you know that in real conversation there are certain things that we try as much as possible to avoid, and those are the signposts. Like in the next chapter I will discuss, which we see in most textbooks in school, or our lectures always use that phrase when we are in school or learning a new topic. So overly mechanically summaries and lists, avoid that features too. So classic prose requires preparation and refined thinking, but these efforts are invisible to the reader. The writer feels effortless even though it is the result of careful planning. Okay, so imagine yourself and the reader standing side by side, and you are looking through a clear window at a particular subject or a certain subject. Here, your job is simply to direct attention. Your job is simply to direct attention. So notice what classic prose always avoids, that you rarely see phrases like, in this essay I will discuss, as some lectures always do, or during conversations or presentation, we mostly use phrases like this, or using the phrase in the next chapter. So these are signposts, and it draws attention to the writing itself. So classic prose does not want attention on the writing. Keep that in mind, that classic prose do not want attention on the writing. So it wants attention on the subject. The subject that you are writing, that is what the classic prose style focuses on, but not the other way. And it feels natural, almost effortless. But always remember that effortlessness is carefully constructed. Then let's come back to the thought and language, which is very essential when you are using classic prose to write, to be a better writer. So in classic style, thought always precedes writing. So your ideas are fully formed before you begin to write them down. Always you conceive idea before it is written down, and it is natural. So writing is not a process of thinking aloud. It is a presentation of polished thought. So before you put something down, or before you pen something down, it is something that you've thought of it before you put it down. So thought comes before writing, as I mentioned. And another important idea in classic prose is thinking and writing. Know that thinking and writing are not the same thing. Thinking and writing are not the same thing. They are two different things altogether. So the thinking happens first. Then the thought is always refined, complete, and polished. So you polish it. Then there is the written. So classic prose is not thinking out loud, as I mentioned on the page, but it is notes towards an idea. It stands alone. So the thought stands alone, the writing also stands alone. So when you read it, it feels finished. So the idea, the thought and language. So as you conceive the thought, know also that language is sufficient. So language is sufficient to express any idea of your choice, no matter how abstract it is. So classic prose assumes language is always capable. Even when it is complex, abstract ideas can be expressed clearly. So great classic writers often make abstract concepts feel concrete. They ground ideas in scenes, images, or familiar mental patterns. So this is why the writing always feels clear, and you can see it through the work of the writer. You can also touch it. So classic writers often ground abstract concepts in physical scenes or familiar mental patterns, helping the reader visualize and understand complex ideas. So this makes it even difficult subjects clear and vivid. It makes difficult subjects clear and vivid. And there are examples for us to consider. So examples of classic prose is, consider this line from Mark Twain's Life on the Mississippi. Okay, and this a phrase that I picked from that book. When in quotes he said, "When I was a boy, there was but one permanent ambition among my comrades. That was to be a stream boatman." From this line, here the author, he presents his memory as fact, and he does not hedge, he does not qualify. He simply shows you the scene. You observe it with him. So you observe it with him. So now let's think of C.S. Lewis in the discarded image. He also described a medieval man as an organizer, a builder of systems. He speaks with confidence about centuries-old people. So of course, it is interpretation, okay, but he presents it as an observable reality. So the confidence will always invite you to see it the same way. So this example demonstrates confidence, clarity, and respect for the reader's intelligence. So you don't have to take your reader for granted. Here, you don't take your readers for granted at all. So what are the surface features you will notice in classic prose? Yeah. So if you want to identify classic prose quickly, look for these signs. These are the signs that you need to look out for. And the signs are no anxious hedging. It is always clear with vivid sentences. And we have the economy of words. Then you refine thought expressed word plainly. So it often resembles plain style, but with depth. And it's also feel intelligent without being complicated. So when you use classic prose, so classic prose is always so know when you should use classic prose to write, or when you should use classic prose. So classic style is ideal for communicating complex ideas to a broad audiences. It is powerful when you want to communicate complex ideas clearly. And writers who needs to translate field-specific knowledge into clear, accessible writing. It is especially useful when addressing readers outside your field. But it is not for every situation. It is not for every situation, as there are limitations. So, and it is not also suited for all audiences or purposes. Some readers expect a practical, straightforward style. Some audiences also expect practical format with clear signposts, so it varies, and overusing it can feel more monotonous or self-parodying, especially if the insights are common or superficial. Used too long, classic prose style can feel monotonous. So don't overuse it for a long time. So there are key approaches which will make it more flexible, or the key approach is to make it flexibility. So you can move in and out of it as needed. For example, the Declaration of Independence of Ghana uses its selectivity to enhance clarity and impact. So use it when clarity and shared perspective matter most. So there's a key takeaway for writers or would-be writers or prospective writers. So classic prose is not about sounding old-fashioned. So some people feel like using classic prose style is old-fashioned and now we are in modern, but it is good for you to know how to use classic prose style to write. Okay, you can blend it. So it is all about clarity, it is about confidence, it is about respecting your readers, and most importantly, it is about presenting truth as something both of you can see together. And if you begin thinking this way before you write, your sentences will naturally change and your writing will feel more calmer, stronger, clearer, and it is the quiet power of classic prose. So classic prose is a powerful tool for any writer, yourself, but with practice it will help your writing feel effortless, confident, and deeply persuasive without ever trying too hard. So if this breakdown helped you, subscribe for more writing lessons, and in the comments tell me, do you think most writers over explain? Let's continue the conversation. Thank you.